Question from Vivek. Is controlling lust forcefully helpful or harmful? Does it indicate an increase in our love for Krishna, or is it just a temporary mental state, or is it a harm to our shaking consciousness? Answer: it depends on what is the motivation and what is the nature of the action we are doing. The tasmatvam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshava papamanam prajahiyainam jnana vijnana nashanam. So in 3.41, 3.36 to 43, Krishna talks about how to deal with lust. In 3.41, he does talk about sensual regulation. Tasmatvam indriyanya adav. Adav, in the beginning, control the senses. Niyamya bharatarshava. And in this way curb lust, and later on he says in 3.43, rise to the spiritual platform, and thereby rising to the spiritual platform, conquer lust completely. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhya atmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kama rupam durasatam. So now sensory regulation is a necessary but not sufficient step for dealing with lust. Necessary in the sense that if there is no sensory regulation, there is no hope ever of controlling lust, because we are like putting fuel in fire and the fire will never get extinguished. So now sensory regulation itself, what level of sensory regulation one can have will depend on person to person. That's why there is brahmachari ashram, there is grahastha ashram, and like that there are multiple standards, and each of us according to our nature can decide how we are going to regulate our senses. There are certain principles which of course we have to follow, but then there is individual level of seriousness, commitment and all that, which will determine at what level we will practice. So now, as I said, sensory regulation is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Not sufficient because when we are all by nature pleasure seeking. So if we just cut off sensory pleasure, then naturally we feel deprived, and that sense of deprivation can make us feel either irritable, or we will try to find some substitute pleasure for that deprivation of the pleasure that is coming from lust. And that can come in many ways, but two major ways can be: one is can come as anger. We snap at everything that goes wrong and we become overall irritable and angry, or otherwise it comes as pride. Now we look down, just because I am controlling my senses, so I look down at everyone who is not able to control the senses. But the point is, both of these are material. And it is, of course, another thing that can happen is if we are not able to control the senses, then we may go into depression, and we may go into a self-loathing mode where we look down at ourselves, and where we develop a sort of self-hatred also. All these are undesirable complexes. The point is, we want to think about Krishna. We are not primarily concerned about controlling the senses or controlling lust. Our primary purpose is becoming devoted to Krishna. So in the 11th canto in the Uddhav Gita, it is said that a devotee who is unable to control the senses should not become a frustrated devotee of renunciation. And one should not become renunciation centered, one should say Krishna centered. So essentially our focus should be on trying to increase our devotional activities as much as possible, and it should be focused on trying to connect with Krishna more and more, and that should be our primary endeavor. And if we are able to control the senses, well and good. If we find that there are some lapses, then as soon as we realize that what we have done is wrong, we shake ourselves, we get up and start moving again. So if we dwell too much on the lapses, then we are more guilt conscious, or more will become more depressed. All those complexes will happen. So the important point is to stay connected with Krishna, because it is not our willpower alone that is going to cure lust. It is our devotion to Krishna that is ultimately going to cure lust. So now, regarding whether our controlling lust forcefully, what is it? It depends on how we are doing it. If we are just by a sheer act of will saying no, 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 that will at best be a temporary mental state. At other times it can become negative also, in the sense that, as I said, it will lead to other anarthas, and of course it can lead to other complications also. So we may have to say no when especially the mind gets agitated and we get provoked by sense objects, but immediately following that no should be a yes. That means we chant Krishna's names, or we absorb ourselves in some devotional activities, and by absorbing ourselves in some devotional activity, some form of constructive activity. So we should ourselves make a list of activities that we can do, which we can relatively easily absorb ourselves in, constructive activities in service to Krishna. And then when we do that, then every time the negative agitation of lust becomes a spur for positive absorption in Krishna. And that positive absorption in Krishna is definitely a sign of our increase, of our progress towards Krishna, of our increased devotion to Krishna. So don't be focused on, we shouldn't be focused on just controlling lust forcefully or otherwise. Certainly some amount of force in terms of willpower is required, but the willpower can be initially for giving up the negative, but essentially the willpower needs to be on connecting with the positive, on connecting with Krishna. And if we stay connected with Krishna like this, then definitely we will be going closer and closer to Krishna, and gradually the agitation because of lust will become lesser and lesser. Thank you. Hare Krishna.